When we use the Entity API, we get a lot of stuff for free, just by declaring specific classes in our hook entity info instance. In this lesson, I'd like to take a look at some of those things that we get for free and how they actually work under the hood, so that it's not just black magic. We're going to take a look at the UI controller in a bit more depth, and how some of those things, like the ability to have all of these paths for our entities automatically created for us, works. And then I'd like to override the UI controller's hook forms method so that we can fix the form that we created earlier that had the video underscore form name and make it match with our video entity underscore form module name. So let's go ahead and take a look at how we would do those things by overriding the UI controller. We've looked at a bunch of different controllers and ways that we can override them by extending the default class and providing our own implementation, and then overriding the methods provided by that default class. One of them that we haven't looked at yet is the Entity UI controller. We provided a default administrative interface by simply adding a key to our hook entity info and specifying a controller class and a couple of other parameters here, and then Drupal and the Entity API gave us a whole lot of that administrative interface for free. Over on our site, the things that we got were this page here at admin/video entity that listed out all of our videos, including their label, the operations that we can perform like edit and delete. I can go ahead and click edit and that will take me to the appropriate URL. We did have to do a bit of work to set up the form on this page, but the page itself already existed. We also have the ability to delete an entity, and that works just fine without me having had to write any code to deal with that. What if I wanted to make changes to any of those things though? For our example, we're going to look at modifying the table that's output on this default page here. Our list of videos, it would be nice if instead of label up at the top here, the option or header here said video. So how would we go about doing that? In our video entity.module file, we've already got an implementation of the video entity UI controller, which we created earlier on. However, our implementation is currently blank. There's nothing there. It's just a simple extension of the default UI controller. Let's take a look at the default UI controller and see what that does. The default UI controller is from the entity module in contrib, and it's in the file named entity.ui.inc. This controller has a whole bunch of methods that deal with creating all of those pages that we've seen and the defaults that are available. When I first opened up this controller, the thing that made the most sense to me was this hook menu method here. And what's happening is the entity module is actually invoking this hook menu method on our UI controller for our video entity type. And then it's going through and creating all of these hook menu paths for us without us having to do any extra work. And that's how we got things like the page where we can view a table of all of our videos. That's how we got a page that houses the form where we can add or edit a video. It's also how the delete happens and a bunch of additional operations. If you've built modules in Drupal before, this hook menu implementation should look pretty similar to things that you've seen in the past. Scrolling through here, we can also see that it's dealing with hook forms and is what's responsible for having made all of these form callbacks where we just automatically got our entity type underscore form function, and all we had to do was fill in the form array and return that, and things just worked. That's because of this hook forms implementation here. And then there's all of these overview form validate, overview form submit, a bunch of different functions that deal with all of the things that we've seen in the UI. You get a big list of all of these functions, and you can see that we've got them for most of the pages that we've seen already, including that table that we see on the listing of our video entities, and this one looks like the table headers. I'm going to take a look at that method, and it looks like if I want to change the table header from label to video instead, all I need to do is override this overview table headers function in our custom UI controller. So I'm just going to copy this function completely into our video entity.module file, and I'm going to put it inside of the video entity UI controller class, just way down at the bottom of my file. So now, whenever the video entity UI controller is invoked and the overview table headers method is called, it's going to call the version in our class here rather than in the default UI controller. And all I have to do is change this from label to video. And this should work so that once we go over to our page and refresh, you'll see that I've now simply updated this to say video, whereas before it said label. So that's really easy. And I didn't get rid of any of the other defaults that were already here. I still get the page, I still get the table, edit works, delete works, and all of those things. I know it's sort of a simple example, but I did want to point out, in case you were curious, where all of that magic came from. The majority of it is in the entity default UI controller, which is in the entity.ui.inc file in the module from Contrib. I highly recommend, if you want to make changes to any of those default pages, that you start looking there and see if there's a method that you can override in order to accomplish what you need.